We are on air. Hi, Ian, finally. Yeah, very well. It is now on this side. It is 7 minutes to 8 on Saturday morning, and I am in Auckland, New Zealand. And where are you
And
currently?
at this end, I'm in London, England, to be more precisely at the Apollo Theatre on Shaftesbury Avenue in the West End, where it is coming up to 9 o'clock. And the second act of a show that I'm understudying in is about to begin downstairs. So I'm in my dressing room where I have spent most evenings for the last 6 weeks, waiting to be called on.
Great. So, pray tell, what happens if you are called on and you have to be on stage?
Then we'll have to stop the interview and we'll pick it up later. I think we're safe. I can hear them now. I can hear the curtain going up. So they're underway. Nothing's going to happen. We're going to be fine.
Great. So thanks again for taking this time to be interviewed, because you are a very interesting man. And I had the privilege of meeting you at the Washington, D.C. conference last year. And as I heard from many women in particular, interestingly enough, you were actually the star of the show.
Oh, come on. I doubt it, but anyway, that's very kind of you. We had a lot of fun in the workshop that I did, and it was I hope it was very enjoyable for the participants, and I hope people got to see something about the work that I did on improvisation and Imago and the relationship between the two.
Yeah, so I'd really like to hear a little bit more about that, and also just what made you, as a barrister, mediator, and professional actor, decide to do professional facilitator training with Sophie Slade?
Well, I first came across Imago when I read Harville's book, probably about 7 years ago, and I was in a relationship at the time, and I remember getting the workbook, and my partner and I at the time started and soon got into real difficulties. So I appreciated that this was quite challenging work. I was quite fascinated by the whole theory of relationship. So later on, when I was a mediator, I really wanted to do the professional training to add to my skills as something that I can offer the clients that I work with. And also for personal reasons as well, in my relationship that I was in at the time then. So my girlfriend and I at the time, we then did the weekend course that Sophie ran in London. And then I went on to complete the 1-year facilitation training with her. And I now use those skills in my work that I do with couples. I do some Imago counseling work, but I also, as a mediator, deal with people who've decided to end the relationship, and really use the dialogue technique as a way of helping them to connect sufficiently to enter the meaningful discussions they need to have around their children or their finances. So really as a tool, not as a sort of examination of the relationship and why it may have broken down, but really just as a way of getting them to connect. Because sometimes, at that stage, with all of that kind of background, the communication has completely fallen apart.
I mean, I think those conversations, especially with a couple who are almost consciously divorcing, those safe conversations are really, really important. Because as you say, the relationship continues either in the co-parenting role for some time after that.
Very much so. And I think the key is when you said, that sort of consciously, this phrase about, consciously uncoupling or consciously decoupling, to actually bring some closure to the relationship, where you can have some conversations. And it may not be the last time they speak, but it's a kind of a milestone. It's some sort of an ending and a new beginning. And to be able to have some dialogue at that time is pretty important. So, yeah.
Great. And tell us, how has, I'm really curious about professional acting part and Imago and other contexts.
Well, it was only recently that I trained as an actor, and it was probably a couple of years before I did the Imago facilitation. And during the course of the training, I started to make some connections between the principles that underlie particularly the dialogue process, but Imago generally, and the techniques of improvisation. And what I covered in the workshop at the conference last year was a basic sort of introduction to the three ground rules or principles, if you like, of improvisation, which to me at least have a remarkable similarity with how an Imago process works. And the first of those is to listen. And of course, that's a key component in dialogue. The second is to say yes and, they call it a yes and attitude. So in other words, to receive what your partner is saying and accept them as they are, rather than blocking or trying to change them in some way. And then the third rule of improv is to commit. So that's kind of replicated in the idea that a couple may commit to the actual process of working with a facilitator or with a therapist, or more generally commit to their relationship in order to work through whatever issues that they're dealing with. So, and those are exactly the same structures as you use as an improvised actor. And so I got quite interested in this. I spoke to Sophie about it and she immediately got it. In fact, we started doing some little improvised sketches and routines in the breaks in our training with her in London, and then she very much encouraged me to develop it. And I think you know that I produced this DVD that I brought out to the conference last year. And I have some copies of this. In fact, one of these what I'm going to do live on air, I'm going to sign this very copy, which Sophie herself, who's in London at the moment, is going to bring out, because it's going to go into the silent auction. This very copy, and hopefully someone there can enjoy watching that and using the material on there with their clients. I worked with a couple who are both professional actors, and they're also married to each other in a long-term relationship. So they were really ideal to have modeled some of these techniques, which are good for facilitators to do in terms of giving you confidence in a process which is live, where you don't know what's going to happen, what's going to arise in the work that you were doing. But it's also good for the couples to do some of these little exercises, because it gets them moving around, it stops them talking about problems, they do things in a much more fun and constructive way. And if you can drop a few of those in session with clients, it helps to just shake things up a little bit.
Right. I think those three aspects are so important. So I'm just going to say them back to make sure that I've got them. So it's listening, it's yes and commitment. And that's in improv, and that's in acting, and that's also in Imago. That's really so important to remember that. And I just want to thank you for your generosity in signing live on air and donating, or actually sending this off to our silent auction.
One day the autograph might be worth something one day. Not now.
Yes, so for those people attending the international conference in Florida, make sure you get to the silent auction table early on and start making your bid. As Ian said, this may be worth millions someday. Yeah. Thank you, Ian.
And I hope everyone has a great conference. I'm really sorry that I can't be there this year. I very much hope I can come to next year's, but I wish everyone well, and we hope you send them my love.
Great. And just in closing, just before we step into some improv work ourselves, I was wondering if there was a particular funny moment in using Imago, or a story from professional facilitator work that you do.
Well, there were a couple of things that happened at the conference. I think you were there during the flag ceremony, when for some reason I was asked to carry the Russian flag. And we got a whole little routine going on how I was some undercover agent working for the KGB, and I was sending back signals to Moscow. There was this conference in Washington, and these Imago people were somehow trying to change the world, and what would happen. And we got off on a good start, I think, at the beginning. But there was also a moment I wanted in the session that I did, because we do this thing where we tell stories one word at a time. And storytelling is a very good way of exploring relationships, because either in a group or with a couple, if you're alternating words, no one person is in control, and you're creating something entirely new. And you don't know where you're going to end up, but you're on this joint venture together. And sometimes your part may be big, with a big word that's a sort of turning point in the story. Sometimes your part may be small, with a and or a V. And we were telling this story, and it was going around the group, and the sequence of words had got to the world, and then the next person said chocolate. And that completely threw me, because I thought, well, how are we going out of this? And then in a stroke of inspiration, the next person said organization. So we suddenly created the WCO, the World Chocolate Organization. And again, in my head, I was thinking of the headquarters maybe being, in Switzerland or somewhere particularly appropriate, with various conventions, the Cadbury's convention or the Hershey agreement, something chocolatey. So it was a lovely moment of inspired improvisation that got us out of our hole.
And that story is just delightful, and I love the idea of just the creativity and the possibilities that come up. And I personally would be very happy to attend the Cadbury's convention at the World Chocolate Organization in Geneva. Thank you for that.
Well, I've got an idea that we might finish on, if you were up for one improvised game. So I've got some cards here, and these are the beginnings of the first word in a proverb that you and I are going to create now. This is a never before heard proverb, some wise words that we are going to bestow upon the Imago community. So you up for this?
I am up for it, ready and waiting for this wisdom to come
I've got some words on these cards, and what I'll do is I'll shuffle them, and I tell you what I'll do is I'll put them, okay, so I'm going to turn these over, and when you get to one that you like, tell me to stop. And I'll stop.
So you need to move them over just a little bit, because I can't see them fully on the screen. A little bit. Yeah, that's good.
Maybe they're upside. Are they back to front, or are they the right way around?
I can read them now. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. So you tell me to stop. Blindfolded.
Always.
Okay. So I will start a proverb with the word always, and all we're going to do is alternate words, one word at a time. And when we've come to a natural conclusion, because the wisdom between us as a couple is so profound, we're going to stroke our imaginary beards and nod very sagely and make a knowing sound. Okay, you've got to join in with that bit. Okay, so there's a little time delay because you're in New Zealand and I'm in London, so this may this may be a bit protracted, but let's give it a go. Okay, always
remember
to
ask.
Now that broke up. Always remember to
ask.
It's gone silent, Michelle.
Oh,
always remember to keep going. We've got to keep going. I can't hear you though.
Always remember to take
your
time
when
you
spell
out
word
that.
Okay. Always remember to take your time when you spell out words that rhyme. See, that's never been said before, and there's probably a reason for it. But it's profound in its own way.
So do we get to copyright them?
Oh yeah, it's an original work.
Well, Ian, thanks very much for your time. That's all we have got time for today. And it is always a pleasure chatting to you. And break a leg.
Thank you very much. We'll catch up soon.
Great.
Bye for now.
Cheers, Ian. Bye.